In one of the most audacious agricultural experiments ever attempted, farmers in Xinjiang, China, scattered 100,000 rose seeds across one of the planet's most unforgiving landscapes, the desert. On paper, this venture seemed destined to fail spectacularly. Yet what unfolded over the following months defied every prediction and left scientists, environmentalists, and agricultural experts stunned. Fast forward 1 year to flowering season. Instead of being met with the familiar sight of scorched earth, dying vegetation, and relentless sand dunes marching forward, these farmers gazed upon something extraordinary. A vast ocean of blooming roses stretching across more than 50,000 mu. That's roughly 8,300 acres, or about 6,300 American football fields covered in fragrant, colorful petals swaying in the desert wind. For China, this wasn't merely an aesthetic triumph or a publicity stunt designed for social media clicks. This region has long been classified as an agricultural no-go zone, a place where the odds are brutally stacked against any form of cultivation. With annual rainfall barely registering on meteorological charts, soil so saturated with salt that it resembles a chemical wasteland, and temperature swings so extreme they would challenge even the hardiest of organisms, this environment has historically repelled agricultural ambitions. Growing delicate roses, flowers traditionally associated with gentle climates, regular watering, and tender care, in such a hostile setting seemed ludicrous. Yet this project represents something far more significant than ornamental gardening. It's a critical front line in China's ongoing battle against desertification, an environmental crisis that threatens millions of lives and livelihoods. When the proposal first circulated among agricultural circles, the response was almost universally dismissive. Seasoned experts, many with decades of experience in arid land management, declared the idea unworkable. The consensus was clear: failure was inevitable. So how did these determined farmers prove everyone wrong? How did they coax life from one of Earth's most inhospitable environments? And what does this achievement mean for the future of desert reclamation worldwide? If you're interested in stories about human ingenuity, environmental innovation, and the relentless pursuit of seemingly impossible goals, you'll want to follow this channel for more content like this. Now, let's dive deep into one of the most remarkable agricultural transformations of the 21st century. The desert that devours. Understanding China's desertification crisis. China faces one of the world's most severe desertification problems, and nowhere is this challenge more apparent than in the Tarim Basin of Xinjiang, home to the Taklamakan Desert. The name itself is chilling. In the local Uyghur language, Taklamakan is often translated as place of no return or go in and you won't come out, a stark warning that has echoed through centuries of human history. This is the world's second largest shifting sand desert, sprawling across an incomprehensible 337,600 square kilometers. To put that in perspective, that's an area larger than New Mexico, or roughly equivalent to the combined size of 3 South Koreas. The Taklamakan accounts for approximately 76% of all desert land in Xinjiang province, and nearly half, 49%, of China's total desert area. But these statistics only tell part of the story. Within this massive expanse, approximately 258,400 square kilometers consist of mobile sand dunes, mountains of sand that shift, migrate, and reshape the landscape with the seasons and winds. Some of these dunes tower to heights of 300 meters, roughly equivalent to a 100-story skyscraper. Imagine standing at the base of such a structure, except instead of concrete and steel, it's an unstable mass of golden sand that could bury entire villages. For generations, the farming communities of Xinjiang have lived in the shadow of this expanding desert. It's not a static threat, but an active, encroaching menace. Sand erosion steadily consumes valuable farmland, sometimes overnight. Roads disappear beneath advancing dunes, isolating communities. The ecosystem suffers catastrophic damage as native vegetation is buried and biodiversity collapses. The human cost is equally devastating. Farmers watch helplessly as generations of agricultural heritage vanish beneath the sand. Homes are abandoned, communities fracture. The psychological toll of fighting a seemingly unwinnable battle against nature weighs heavily on those who call this region home. Building a green wall, China's decades-long defense strategy. After years of watching their land disappear grain by grain, Chinese experts and local authorities finally mobilized a comprehensive response. Following extensive investigation, data collection, and strategic planning, a bold solution emerged in 1978. Construct a massive green protective belt around the desert's perimeter. This wasn't just planting a few trees and hoping for the best. The plan called for a continuous vegetation barrier stretching 3,046 kilometers. That's roughly the distance from New York City to Los Angeles. The objective was nothing less than containing the entire Taklamakan Desert, creating a living wall that would halt the desert's expansion and protect the surrounding agricultural regions. This multi-decade project involved not just planting, but also understanding the complex dynamics of desert ecology. Chinese farmers worked alongside botanists, soil scientists, climatologists, and environmental engineers to identify which species could survive, where to plant them, and how to maintain them in such an extreme environment. As part of this broader environmental restoration initiative, the rose planting project was conceived. The goal was to scatter 100,000 rose seeds across the desert and establish approximately 50,000 mu of rose gardens. By the end of 2023, after 45 years of sustained effort, a green barrier measuring 2,761 kilometers had successfully taken root around the desert's edge. The final milestone came in November 2024. With the planting of the last rose seedling, a 285-kilometer stretch of this border-locking battle was officially declared complete. It was a moment of triumph, but it also raised profound questions. How is this even possible? The impossible challenge: growing flowers where nothing should survive. Let's be clear about the magnitude of this challenge. The Taklamakan Desert represents one of the harshest environments on Earth for plant life. The average annual rainfall barely reaches 100 millimeters. That's less than 4 inches, roughly equivalent to what Seattle receives in a single month. Meanwhile, annual evaporation rates exceed 3,400 millimeters, meaning any moisture that does appear is quickly sucked back into the atmosphere. More than 3/4 of the desert's surface consists of mobile sand dunes that shift constantly, making it virtually impossible for plants to establish stable root systems. Even hardy desert grasses struggle to survive here. The idea of cultivating delicate flowering plants seemed, well, absurd. The situation becomes even more challenging at the desert's edges, precisely where the green barrier needed to be established. These perimeter zones experience the most violent wind activity and the most aggressive sand dune movement. Previous attempts at sand control using conventional methods had yielded minimal results. Traditional approaches simply couldn't withstand the relentless assault of wind and sand. But in 2023, nature itself provided an unexpected clue. A particularly fierce sandstorm tore through newly planted areas, and the results were devastating for most species. Nearly all of the Haloxylon amodendron seedlings, a shrub previously considered one of the best desert plants, were completely uprooted and destroyed. Yet in the same devastated area, something remarkable was observed. Roughly 2/3 of the rose seedlings had survived the onslaught. This discovery immediately captured the attention of researchers and farmers alike. How could roses, traditionally considered delicate and water-dependent, outperform specialized desert shrubs? The secret beneath the sand: why roses conquered the desert. Plant scientists launched intensive investigations, conducting repeated observations and detailed studies of the surviving rose plants. What they discovered fundamentally changed the understanding of how vegetation could be used to combat desertification. The key lay hidden beneath the surface. Rose root systems, they found, are extraordinary engineering marvels. The primary taproot can penetrate vertically into the sand layer up to 3 meters deep. That's roughly 10 feet, reaching moisture that surface-dwelling plants could never access. But that's only part of the story. Simultaneously, roses develop an extensive network of lateral roots that spread horizontally in all directions. These secondary roots interweave and create what researchers described as a net-like structure that physically locks the sand in place. It's essentially a living anchor system, far more effective than any human-designed barrier. Above ground, the roses provide additional benefits. Their dense foliage and closely spaced planting patterns create a physical barrier that significantly reduces wind velocity at ground level. This dramatically decreases wind erosion, one of the primary mechanisms of desert expansion. In essence, roses attack desertification from multiple angles, simultaneously. Deep roots access water, lateral roots stabilize sand, and above-ground vegetation blocks wind. It's a natural, self-sustaining system that becomes more effective over time as the plants mature. Science meets strategy, the systematic approach to desert roses. Armed with this knowledge, farmers and researchers in Yuqian County, Xinjiang, the epicenter of the rose planting initiative, developed a sophisticated, scientifically grounded planting strategy. This wasn't random scattering of seeds and prayers for rain. Every decision was based on careful analysis of sand distribution patterns, prevailing wind directions throughout the year, hydrological conditions, and terrain characteristics. The approach varied depending on specific local conditions. In areas where the terrain was relatively flat and water sources more accessible, they employed a block planting method, creating concentrated clusters of roses that could support each other and maximize water efficiency. In more challenging locations, areas experiencing frequent sand movement, undulating terrain, the edges of active dunes, or along sand ridge lines, they implemented a strip planting method. This approach created linear barriers that directly confronted the wind's path, breaking up its force before it could gain momentum. But perhaps the most innovative aspect was the development of a tree-shrub-rose mixed planting model. This three-tier system created a comprehensive green belt along the Taklamakan's edge, with each layer serving a specific purpose. Tall trees formed the first line of defense, positioned at the outermost boundary where wind and sand activity was most violent. These trees acted as natural windbreaks, substantially reducing wind speed and deflecting the initial impact of sandstorms before they could reach the roses. Behind this tree barrier, shrubs provided the second defensive layer. Shrubs have remarkably developed root systems that intertwine with the rose roots below ground, creating an even more robust sand-stabilizing network. Additionally, shrubs help improve soil structure, breaking down the salt content over time and creating more hospitable conditions for rose growth. Finally, the roses themselves form the third layer, now protected by two defensive barriers and able to thrive in significantly improved conditions. This multi-layered approach proved extraordinarily effective, increasing rose survival rates by more than 60% compared to single-species plantings. It's a perfect example of biomimicry and ecological design, working with nature's principles rather than against them. Engineering better roses. The Cultivation Breakthrough. Scientific intervention didn't stop at planting strategy. Chinese botanists embarked on an intensive program of variety cultivation and selective breeding, with the specific goal of developing rose cultivars that could not only survive but flourish in desert conditions. Through careful grafting techniques and multi-generational selection, they successfully created several drought-resistant rose varieties with exceptional adaptability. These new cultivars retained the aesthetic beauty and fragrance of traditional roses while gaining the hardiness of desert plants. These specially developed roses could withstand extreme temperature fluctuations, required minimal water compared to conventional roses, and demonstrated remarkable resilience to salt-heavy soils. Crucially, they also maintained excellent sand fixing and soil stabilizing properties. With these improved varieties in hand, local farmers proceeded with the ambitious plan: 100,000 rose seeds distributed across 50,000 mu of desert land, an area equivalent to approximately 8,300 acres. The water crisis, when even roses struggled. Despite all the preparation and scientific innovation, the project faced a near-catastrophic challenge in its early stages. As mentioned earlier, the Taklamakan Desert receives less than 80 millimeters of annual rainfall while experiencing evaporation rates exceeding 2,000 millimeters. These are among the most extreme climatic ratios on Earth. Even the hardy, specially bred desert roses couldn't completely overcome such brutal conditions. During the first summer, a significant number of rose plants began to wither, their leaves curling and browning despite their deep root systems. The situation called for drastic intervention. Utian County authorities implemented an innovative solution: artificial precipitation enhancement. Using cloud seeding technology and strategic weather modification techniques, they successfully increased annual precipitation in the rose cultivation zones by approximately 8%. While 8% might seem modest, in an environment where every milliliter of water is precious, this increase proved critical. The additional moisture, combined with strategic timing to coincide with the plant's most vulnerable growth stages, enabled the vast majority of roses to survive the summer drought and establish themselves more firmly. From reluctance to enthusiasm, the economic transformation. When the Taklamakan Desert Control Project first launched, there was a significant problem: farmer participation. Many local farmers were deeply skeptical, viewing sand control work as backbreaking labor with no financial return. It was environmental work, certainly, but it didn't put food on the table or money in the bank. The initial response was tepid at best. Farmers watched from the sidelines, unconvinced that fighting the desert was worth their time and effort. Recognizing this barrier, the Chinese government introduced a game-changing policy: whoever controls the sand benefits. This wasn't just a slogan. It came with real financial incentives. Farmers who participated in rose planting would receive subsidies of 3 to 4 yuan per mu, roughly 50 to 65 cents per mu, which adds up significantly over thousands of mu. The response was immediate and dramatic. Farmers who had been passive observers suddenly became active participants. The promise of tangible economic benefit transformed the entire dynamic. But the government didn't stop at planting subsidies. Recognizing that sustainable participation required sustainable economics, officials invested in developing a complete rose industry ecosystem in Utian County. They established processing facilities capable of producing more than 30 different rose-derived products: rose essential oil, flower tea, cosmetics, perfumes, dried petals, rose water, and various health supplements. The total investment approached 2 million yuan, approximately $280,000, creating an entire value chain from cultivation to consumer products. The economic impact was transformative. In 2018 alone, Utian County added 21,000 mu of new rose cultivation area, with an average yield of 220 kilograms per mu. By 2019, the desert rose industry had generated more than 46 million yuan, approximately $6.4 million, in increased income for local farmers. Employment opportunities exploded. The industry created positions for 180,000 seasonal workers, generating over 30 million yuan in income. Additionally, by purchasing rose flowers, dried buds, seedlings, and even organic fertilizer from local farmers, the industry injected another 16 million yuan into the rural economy. By 2024, the numbers had grown even more impressive. Annual rose output reached 2.5 kilograms per plant, with an annual production value exceeding 6,000 yuan per mu, approximately $840 per mu. The project had directly benefited 4,238 households, with each household seeing an average annual income increase of 63,000 yuan, roughly $8,800, a life-changing sum in rural China. Roses and tourism have brought an unexpected bonus to the region. The economic benefits have definitely extended beyond just agriculture. Yutian County, in a really clever move, capitalized on the visual spectacle of 50,000 mu of blooming desert roses by developing specialized agro-tourism destinations. The contrast is honestly stunning: waves of colorful roses set against golden sand dunes, with the snow-capped peaks of the Kunlun Mountains visible off in the distance. It's an almost otherworldly landscape that attracts photographers, nature enthusiasts, and tourists from all over the globe. In 2024, Yutian County welcomed 490,500 domestic and international tourists, which represented a year-over-year increase of 55.15%. Total tourism revenue approached $10 million, creating yet another revenue stream for the local economy. The roses themselves have gained international recognition, too. Agricultural experts and botanists from around the world have taken notice of the Yutian desert roses, which are now recognized as among the rose varieties with the highest essential oil yield and most concentrated fragrance globally. A British plant expert who studied these desert roses noted that they contain all 18 essential amino acids required by the human body and possess notable antioxidant and anti-aging properties. While such claims definitely require further scientific validation, they've certainly contributed to the commercial appeal of Yutian's rose products in both domestic and international markets. Addressing the criticism, let's talk about the water resource debate. Critics of the project have raised some legitimate concerns about water consumption. In a region where water is perhaps the most precious resource, does it really make sense to dedicate substantial amounts to growing roses, especially flowers that seem ornamental rather than essential? This criticism, while totally understandable, misses several crucial points. First, the project operates under a strict principle: greening by water availability. Expansion only happens in areas where water resources can sustainably support it. There's no indiscriminate planting, regardless of water constraints. Second, the project employs advanced drip irrigation technology throughout the cultivation areas. This precision watering system delivers moisture directly to plant roots with minimal waste, increasing water utilization efficiency by about 50% compared to traditional irrigation methods. Third, and this is really critical, the geographic location was specifically chosen because of favorable water conditions. The roses are primarily planted along the southern edge of the Taklamakan Desert, near the northern foothills of the Kunlun Mountains. The Kunlun Range is one of Asia's great mountain systems, with a glacier coverage area of 14,000 square kilometers, representing 30% of the entire mountain area. These glaciers serve as natural water towers, storing vast quantities of frozen water that gradually melts throughout the year. The meltwater from these glaciers is exceptionally pure and rich in minerals, providing ideal irrigation water for the roses. Water flow varies seasonally, with peak flow occurring during summer when glacial melting is most intense, accounting for 60 to 80% of annual water flow. Conveniently, this lines up perfectly with the roses' period of maximum water demand. Additionally, the southern edge of the Taklamakan Desert sits atop extensive groundwater reserves. These aquifers are estimated to contain approximately 8 trillion cubic meters of water, equivalent to the volume of 8 Yangtze rivers or roughly 10 Lake Baikals. While surface conditions remain arid, these unique geographical advantages, glacial meltwater and deep groundwater, create a sustainable water supply that makes large-scale rose cultivation feasible without environmental degradation. Beyond roses, let's look at the desert ginseng revolution. If you thought growing roses in the desert was audacious, just consider what's happening in Shaya County, located right in the heart of the Taklamakan Desert. Here, Chinese farmers are cultivating approximately 110,000 mu of something called desert ginseng. The name is, well, a bit misleading. This isn't the ginseng that's traditionally grown in the cool, humid forests of northeastern China or Korea, a plant that needs moderate temperatures and would literally die if exposed to temperatures above 32 degrees Celsius. Instead, desert ginseng refers to Cistanche deserticola, a parasitic plant species that has evolved to thrive in conditions that would kill almost any other organism. Its requirements honestly read like a recipe for environmental disaster. Extreme drought, intense sunlight, annual precipitation below 250 millimeters, and dramatic day-night temperature swings. These are exactly the conditions found in the Taklamakan. While they spell doom for conventional crops, for Cistanche deserticola, they represent the ideal habitat. This plant offers multiple benefits. Beyond its medicinal properties, Cistanche has been used in traditional Chinese medicine for centuries. It serves important ecological functions. During its flowering period, Cistanche produces abundant nectar and blooms for extended periods, making it one of the few high-quality nectar sources in the desert ecosystem. Beekeepers have started establishing operations in these Cistanche cultivation areas, harvesting premium desert honey during the flowering season. This has given birth to an entirely new industry, desert apiculture. The dual nature of Cistanche, both a medicinal crop and a nectar source, means desert farmers can generate income while also supporting biodiversity and ecosystem health. Bees pollinate other desert plants, strengthening the entire ecological web. It's just another example of the innovative thinking that's transforming China's deserts from dead zones into productive landscapes. Now let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Lessons for a warming world. The Yutian Rose Project and the broader Taklamakan Desert Greening Initiative represent more than just agricultural innovation in a single Chinese province. They offer crucial lessons for a world that's confronting accelerating desertification driven by climate change. According to United Nations estimates, desertification affects approximately 3.2 billion people globally. That's more than 40% of Earth's population. Each year, an area roughly the size of Greece is lost to desert expansion, primarily in Africa, the Middle East, South Asia, and parts of the Americas. As global temperatures rise and precipitation patterns shift, these problems are only going to intensify. What works in Xinjiang might just prove applicable in the Sahel, the Middle East, or the American Southwest.